Let's start where things stand right now. What is the latest on the site in Israel?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. We completed all of the flowback operations on June 10th. We demobilized from Israel. So currently, we have the well temporarily shut in as we evaluate one, the all of the test data that came in, and two, options for the future, which include sidetracking, using either the rig or potentially coil tubing. So we're looking at both of those options, one for feasibility and two for economics. So those are currently in the engineering phase, and hopefully we can start moving towards procurement and scheduling by the end of this month.
Nice. So what you're actually saying is things continue to move. And the last update, we said we had gas to surface. And you mentioned a little bit about that analysis. Can you walk us through what we saw in the recent gas composition analysis? Is there anything that stands out?
Yeah, I can hop in here on this, Andrew.
Okay.
One of the things, the tests that came back from our gas samples, indicate that, obviously we are into a hydrocarbon bearing feature, and we're going to go ahead and exploit the reservoir area that we see. We have good closure on this, and then going with the horizontal option on this is definitely going to be able to exploit the formation in order to get us something potentially productive.
And so it sounds like we're all the steps with operations, Monty, your work. I know you're over here in the US working with some of our providers and uh, different people that will help us along. What would you say the recent war, the what's being called the 12-day war, how has that impacted us, or has it impacted us?
Well, luckily, we got out about 36 hours before the U.S. bombed Iran and or Israel bombed them, excuse me, and at the start of the 12-day war. So we got out 36 hours before that, which was a miracle in itself. What would have affected us was the closing of the airspace for several weeks, as well as potential importation problems. However, because we got out when we did, our operation was not negatively affected. And as of right now, I don't anticipate any negative effects moving forward. But obviously, it's a volatile situation that we're monitoring on a consistent basis. Right now, airspace is open, ports are open, and hopefully, Israel and the rest of the Middle East is moving towards some sort of long-lasting peace situation, which will just make everything a little bit easier and hopefully a little more economical.
And so looking ahead from an operational standpoint, in the coming months, what can you tell us, me, about the plans ahead? That's often a conversation that our supporters, our investors are asking is, what's around the corner? What can you tell us?
Well, as I mentioned just a minute ago, we're looking at different reentry options. Um, One is using our drilling rig to do a sidetrack to try and pinpoint a little more accurately the production zone and increase the potential production capabilities of that area by lateraling completely through the potential pay zone and doing a multi-stage stimulation operation. So instead of having a single stimulation zone of production, we could have multiple. And by multiple, that could be 4, 8, 12. Just depends on what we see as we're lateraling through the potential pay zone. So there's some things, with the MJ1 well that have to be addressed, both from an engineering standpoint and an operational efficiency standpoint. The first being, where exactly can we lateral from? The deeper down or the closer we can get to the production zone, would be better, but that's still that we're still exploring those options because it's not a true vertical well. We do have some deviations that could potentially create some different issues as far as getting through, opening up a window to get through, and also being able to deviate at a reasonable uh, rate in order to hit the zone. So those are all the things that we're looking at. Uh, we can use coil tubing potentially, which would allow us to go quicker, but the size of the reel is required is going to be very large, and sourcing one of those is proving to be difficult and more than likely is going to be extremely expensive. So those are the two options we're looking at as far as increasing the potential access to pay zones. Other options that we could and have entertained, we could put a submersible pump, which it could help excavate the salt water and try and increase production that way. But that would be more of an increase of testing more than it would be a potential production scenario. So that's kind of at the bottom of the list right now, I would say. So right now we're looking at trying to get this lateral off, and we'll start the procurement process in the next few weeks and see what the availability is of people, personnel, equipment, material.
Awesome. And the next one is more of a larger view, strategic view. And Rob, I know you and I have discussed this a little bit, but we made a comment that this is is the best situation that Zion has been in the history of the company so far. Do you want to speak to that a little bit and what's informing that?
Yeah, Drew, clearly we're positioned very well with the positive results of the composition of the hydrocarbon that we'd sent for laboratory analysis, geological formation of where we're at. It has a lot of the indicators that this is a decent field. We have several areas of interest and inventory that we've picked off the three-dimensional seismic we shot. So we're right on the doorstep of being able to exploit what we have in this area. And like Monty had said, there's additional items that are required just due to the engineering. I'm not going to say difficulties at all, but the engineering feats. These aren't readily available items in Israel. Very common in the U.S. here. So we're going to continue to push for strategic uh, knowledge from industry experts here in the U.S. and abroad in order to maximize this and see where we end up with it. I mean, I'm very comfortable with where we're at as an organization and with what we've seen. It makes move forward very easy.
And I know we can't do, exact comparisons, especially with offshore and what Noble did with the offshore gas. But we had a discussion that it's one way to look at it is that when they started their drilling and their initial positive outlook, it was 1999, and it wasn't until 2009 did it really hit the headlines as far as major gas discoveries and so on and so forth. And during that 10 years, there was a lot in between and everything else. And I know that while there's not an exact comparison, what can we understand or what can we help our people understand a little bit better about exploration and its gradual unfolding rather than what I think a lot of people just assume is just a big bang, rather than an unfolding, and then you look back and say, "Oh, wow, we have something very promising." Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So the vision that people have, or it's more of a spindle top feature or a Leduc feature, where I guess you drill it and up from the ground comes this item. Those days are kind of sunsetted just due to the fact that we're getting more technical for the exploitation of a hydrocarbon. Some of the areas have tighter, tougher geology like we're in. Um, so as far as having, the mindset that this is just going to up from the ground as a bubbling crude type thing, it is really not in this particular region that we would anticipate this. Uh, you know, One of the things that really separate the lanes between onshore and offshore is offshore is a completely different beast. You have a tremendous amount of engineering. A lot of this stuff is years and years in the making in order to just design that platform for that area, or how you're going to, after a discovery, how are you going to maximize your reservoir. These are all items that are engineered, built, custom built for the operating environment, and it takes a tremendous amount of time and money to do that. Where we're afforded the luxury that we're on shore, but at the same time, we have our difficulties, and that's just really sourcing the equipment that doesn't exist in Israel. So a lot of this is either from Eastern Europe or the United States or Canada, right?
Yeah.
We have those built in delays just bringing that equipment in from abroad, but the broad scope of the picture, the offshore is a tremendous amount of time in order to get it to come to market, where onshore we're afforded a little bit rapid ability to do that.
Well, that really reminds me of some of the conversations when I was over there in Israel and just speaking with Monty and with different operational aspects of how different it is to operate in Israel than operating, say, in the United States or in Texas and so on. And I think that we've said this many times in the past, but I think it's worth reminding, especially our newer shareholders, our newer supporters. And Monty, do you want to just, I think what you told me when I was over there, even though I knew it, it just really highlighted how different it is to operate in Israel and how difficult it is. Do you want to remind
Yeah, sure,
our
Andrew.
shareholders of this reality?
One thing that everybody needs to keep in mind when we're operating in Israel, and we say that Israel is an unsupported oil and gas country, is the fact that we're having to procure equipment, people, material from virtually all over the globe. And when you're doing a condensed operation such as well testing, and it gets even more exacerbated when we're doing a drilling campaign, is there's no one-stop shop where you can buy all of your material, people, and equipment from one place. All of this stuff has to come from all over, Europe, Africa, China, the Middle East, the United States, and because it has to go from one of these places into Israel, you're having to schedule and lock down equipment for several weeks or months in advance. And not only that, but you got to start moving equipment even before you're potentially ready for it. And I'll use the wireline truck as an example. If we need wireline for one operation, and it may be only a 1 day operation, we're having to start moving that wireline truck 30 days before we even need it. And we're trying to match up the schedule to be where the wireline unit comes off of the boat in Haifa and gets on location and we can use it. Then what if we needed that same wireline truck, 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later for another run, such as a cement bond log or a casing caliper test or something like that? We can't just send a wireline truck back because it'll take 3 weeks, 4 weeks for it to get back to where it came from, only to turn around and have it shipped back. So we're having to use these pieces of equipment and pay for them, unfortunately, for 5, 6, 7, 8 times what somebody in, say, Texas would use it for. Texas, they could call the wireline company a week in advance, schedule it. They know that the operation is coming up. They use it and they immediately send it back and just call it back when they need it again. So if we're 30 days ahead for each one of these things, whether it's wireline, liner hanger, casing, cement, you name it. We have all these moving parts at any given time. If we have any delay in the operation, that just pushes the schedule back. But a lot of these things that happen, even if it's just a 2-day delay, a 3-day delay, maybe a week delay, all of this stuff in the procurement chain is already moving, and it's logistically in motion. Whether it's being trucked across Europe to catch a boat in Romania, or maybe it's already on a boat from China. I can't just put the brakes and stop everything. So we got to keep things moving. That's why we have to have contingencies and mitigating factors on location. But at the same time, we cannot afford to have every mitigating factor, every piece of equipment, every tool that we could potentially need on location, because it would, triple, quadruple the overall cost of the rig. So it's a very fine balancing game when Israel can supply very little, and you have to go to many multiple countries in order to source everything that's needed for a drilling operation. So it's tricky, it's tough. It gets even more complicated when COVID situations happen or war breaks out, and the airports are closed or the ports are closed, or and that gets our suppliers nervous as well, because they're putting their entire business line on a boat coming over in hopes that we can get it back to them once it's done being used. So it's tough. It's a challenge, but it makes it fun and interesting as well. So those are all the things that we have to work through. And that's also why, it might seem like a simple operation, but oftentimes it takes several months in order to get everybody and all the ducks lined up in a row in order to make it as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, and I think that when I was there and just seeing that in real time, just observing it, it really drove it home of the amount of creativity in the particular moment that you had to come up with in the various operations there. So,
Right.
Rob,
And
just
if one piece of equipment fails to show up, or gets left behind, it's a domino effect of not only today's operation, but potentially operations that are already in motion 6 weeks down the line. So it is a challenge for sure.
well, and it's also the internally we see it a lot is just the absolute miracle after miracle when these things work out, and we look back on it and we say, "Wow, God's definitely been involved in this." So many times that
Yeah,
I've seen. But
yeah.
here.
There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Rob, what would you say is the final thing our shareholders about this moment that you would want them to stick in their mind for our supporters, shareholders, what they should be praying for?
Just one, the best thing I guess we can look at with it is to continue to pray for the nation of Israel, pray for the operations, and just remain patient. There's a time and season for everything, and God's timing is perfect timing on it. So I think we've carried a lot of water to get to where we're at currently, and we're very excited on a go forward basis to be able to fulfill the vision of the organization. Right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time to have this conversation. And I know you're busy, so I'll let you get to it, and I'll get this out to all of our supporters and shareholders.
Thanks, Andrew.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.